In the palm of your hand, it feels like any other coin. Modest in weight. Modest in value. Just 1 rupee. But sometimes, just sometimes, a coin becomes more than currency. It becomes a voice. A declaration. A symbol that outlives the summit it was minted for. In the early spring of 1974, a quiet transformation took place in a city, better known for its poetry than its politics. Lahore, the cultural heart of Pakistan, became the capital of the Islamic world, at least for a few days. A gathering like no other was unfolding. 38 heads of state, from oil-rich monarchs to revolutionary leaders, from the deserts of Arabia to the riverbanks of the Nile, from the mountains of Morocco to the plains of Pakistan. They came not just to talk, but to unite. This was the Second Islamic Summit Conference, but in many ways, it felt like the first true meeting of minds for the modern Muslim world. And in the midst of this history-making event, Pakistan struck a coin, a small circle of metal, bearing a towering minaret and the elegant strokes of Arabic script. Its face read, Islamic Summit Conference, Lahore, 1394, AH, 1974 AD. To the average passerby, it may have looked like a mere commemorative gesture, but for historians, diplomats, and numismatists, it marked a moment of hope, solidarity, and aspiration. This documentary isn't just about a coin. It's about what that coin represents. It's the story of a fragmented Muslim world, trying to speak with one voice. The story of Pakistan rising from the ashes of war, and hosting a summit that defied expectations. It's about how a piece of copper nickel became a statement, not just of currency, but of purpose. From design tables to minting machines, from speeches to handshakes, from copper to conviction. This is the journey of a 1 rupee coin born of unity. This is the story of 1 rupee, 1 ummah. In the chapters that follow, we'll dive into the troubled history that made this summit necessary. We'll see how Pakistan, battered by internal strife, stepped onto the world stage. We'll witness the power plays, the promises, the poetry of unity. And we'll follow the coin itself, from minting, to circulation, to legacy. So sit back, and let's rewind to a world on the edge of transformation, to a summit that aimed to reshape the Islamic world, and to a rupee that became a silent ambassador for faith, unity, and diplomacy. Before there was a coin, before there was a summit, there was a wound that stretched across continents, from the ruins of the Ottoman Caliphate to the refugee camps of Palestine, from war-torn Kashmir to the oil fields of Arabia. It was the wound of disunity, of lost leadership, of a dream deferred. To understand why a single coin, minted in 1974, would come to mean so much, we must first understand the chaos that preceded it. In 1924, a decision was made in Ankara that echoed throughout the Islamic world. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the founder of modern Turkey, formally abolished the Ottoman Caliphate. With a stroke of political reform, centuries of Islamic political leadership came to an end. For over 600 years, the Ottomans had been not just rulers, but symbolic guardians of the Muslim Ummah. Their caliphs were imperfect, yes, but they were a unifying presence. Now, there was nothing. No central authority. No imam of imams. No one to gather the scattered voices of over 1 billion Muslims. The Muslim world, once a sprawling yet loosely connected civilization, fractured. What remained was a patchwork of new nation-states, carved by colonial rulers, divided by language, competing for influence. From Morocco to Malaysia, the map of Islam had been redrawn by outsiders, but its spiritual heart remained unbroken, still beating under the surface. In the 1950s and 60s, a new wave of leadership swept across the Arab world. Names like Nasser, Boumediene, and Assad replaced monarchs and caliphs. But these were not Islamic leaders. They were nationalists, revolutionaries, modernizers. Their rhetoric was fierce and secular. Their goals, independence from colonialism, economic modernization, and regional pride. But religion, that, many argued, belonged in the private realm, not in the halls of government. This new wave of secularism alienated many Muslims, who still longed for a spiritual dimension in their politics. The idea of the Ummah, a global Muslim community, seemed increasingly like a fantasy. Pan-Arabism rose, but Pan-Islamism fell silent. Then came June 1967. In just 6 days, Israel launched a lightning war that left the Arab world stunned and humiliated. Egypt, Jordan, and Syria lost the Sinai Peninsula, West Bank, and Golan Heights. But the greatest blow was emotional: the fall of East Jerusalem, home to Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest site in Islam. The Arab world plunged into a period of mourning, introspection, and rage. Demonstrations erupted. Mosques were filled, and questions began to rise. How could this happen? Where was the unity of the Muslim world? Where was God's help? In many Muslim hearts, the political failures of secular leaders were laid bare. It was a spiritual wake-up call, one that would later fuel the desire for a new kind of summit, not just for Arabs, but for Muslims everywhere. In South Asia, another trauma was unfolding. In 1971, Pakistan, born in the name of Islam, suffered its greatest political catastrophe. After a brutal civil war and military defeat, East Pakistan seceded to become Bangladesh. The Muslim world watched in disbelief as a Muslim-majority country split apart, not along religious lines, but ethnic and political ones. Pakistan, once seen as the ideological anchor of the Islamic world, now stood humbled and blooded. But from this low point emerged a new vision. Its new leader, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, saw opportunity in adversity. If Pakistan could not lead by might, perhaps it could lead by diplomacy, by faith, by offering the Ummah something it desperately lacked: a platform for unity. Meanwhile, a silent revolution was occurring beneath the sands of the Arabian Peninsula. The oil boom had begun. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Libya, and the Gulf states were amassing enormous wealth. With it came influence and expectations. Western powers, once colonial rulers, were now desperate buyers of Middle Eastern oil. The balance of power had begun to tilt. For the first time, Muslim nations had economic leverage. But money alone could not buy unity. Behind palace gates and political alliances, there were deep divisions: a Arab versus non-Arab, a Sunni versus Shia, a monarchies versus republics, a rich versus poor. And always, the unresolved question of Palestine hovered over everything. Despite all this, the Muslim people, the average believer from Jakarta to Cairo, from Istanbul to Kano, shared something their leaders often ignored: a deep yearning for unity, for a voice, for recognition, for dignity, and for leadership that reflected not just power, but values. Something was missing, not from religion, but from politics. Mosques were full, but the United Nations heard silence. Muslim youth debated modernity but saw no direction. Scholars called for ijtihad, but governments clung to status quo. Then, almost out of nowhere, came an invitation from a wounded nation, led by an ambitious man, for a summit unlike any before. And with that invitation came a coin. The Islamic world in 1974 was divided, wounded, and uncertain of its future. But beneath the surface, a movement was stirring, a second wind for the Ummah. And at its center, unexpectedly, was Pakistan. In the next chapter, we journey into the heart of a country searching for redemption, and a leader determined to host the Muslim world on his own soil. In December 1971, Pakistan lost more than a war. It lost half its land, half its people, and, many believed, part of its soul. From the ashes of that catastrophic defeat, a broken nation stood at the edge of dissolution, but it was also at the threshold of reinvention. This is the story of how a country, humbled by history, dared to dream of unity, not just within its own borders, but across the Muslim world. And at the center of that dream was one man. The year was 1971. Pakistan was still young, a state carved out less than 25 years earlier from British India under the rallying cry of Islamic unity. But that unity shattered in fire and blood. After months of internal unrest, political breakdown, and a brutal military campaign, East Pakistan, separated from the West by more than 1,000 miles of Indian territory, rose in rebellion. India intervened. War broke out. And in December, over 90,000 Pakistani soldiers surrendered in Dhaka. Bangladesh was born. And Pakistan, the so-called citadel of Islam, had split in two. At home, there was grief, confusion, anger, and a question that echoed from Karachi to Peshawar. If Pakistan couldn't unite its own people, how could it dream of uniting the Muslim world? Amid this chaos stepped forward a man with a vision and a voice. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, lawyer, orator, populist, and nationalist. He had once served as foreign minister under Ayub Khan. Now, in the wake of the war, he became president, and soon after, the first civilian prime minister under the 1973 constitution. For millions of disillusioned Pakistanis, Bhutto represented hope. For others, he was dangerously ambitious. But one thing was certain: he was a man who understood power and symbols. He knew Pakistan needed more than just infrastructure or weapons. It needed purpose. It needed pride. And he believed it could be found in the wider Islamic world. Bhutto's genius lay in recognizing that while Pakistan had lost political ground, it still held ideological currency. Unlike many Arab regimes teetering between monarchy and military socialism, Pakistan was uniquely positioned. It had been created in the name of Islam. It had a vibrant, diverse Muslim population. It was neither Arab nor Persian, but could speak to both. It had nuclear ambition and geopolitical necessity. Bhutto envisioned a new role for Pakistan, as a bridge between East and West, between modernity and tradition, between Arabs, Africans, and Asians. He called for Islamic socialism, a third path that merged progressive economic policy with cultural and spiritual authenticity. He didn't want Pakistan to be a satellite of the West, nor a puppet of the East. He wanted it to lead the Ummah. And for that, he would need allies. In the early 1970s, Bhutto began cultivating deep ties with Islamic leaders. A King Faisal of Saudi Arabia, the spiritual heavyweight and custodian of the two holy mosques. Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, the fiery revolutionary with a pan-Islamic dream. A Yasser Arafat, the voice of a stateless people, the Palestinians. A Bourguiba of Tunisia. Boumediene of Algeria, Suharto of Indonesia. Shah of Iran, leaders from across continents. Bhutto spoke their language, sometimes literally, often ideologically. He aligned himself with causes that united the Islamic world: Palestine, Kashmir, economic sovereignty, oil independence. His message was clear: let us build a bloc of Muslim nations, one that speaks with a single voice on the world stage. He began preparing not just politically, but symbolically. Pakistan would no longer just host conferences. It would host the conference. While Bhutto maneuvered globally, he was equally focused domestically. Pakistan needed a new identity, not defined by loss, but by leadership. In 1973, a new constitution was passed, declaring Pakistan an Islamic republic under a parliamentary democracy. Major national initiatives were launched: educational reforms, a nationalization of key industries, a cultural revival centered around Islamic heritage. Bhutto used rhetoric carefully, mixing references to the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, Muslim brotherhood, economic justice, and national dignity. For the first time since 1947, Islamic identity was not just a relic of partition, but a blueprint for the future, the dream of Lahore. And then, the plan was revealed. In 1974, Pakistan would host the Second Islamic Summit Conference in Lahore, the city of poets, saints, and resistance. The symbolism was rich. Lahore was where the idea of Pakistan was first formally demanded. In 1940, it had been the eastern capital. Now it would be the heart of a global gathering. Its Sufi shrines, Mughal architecture, and passionate citizens offered the perfect blend of faith and culture. Bhutto wanted the summit to do more than produce resolutions. He wanted it to produce revival. He called it the Islamic Renaissance. A stage set for history. Preparations began months in advance. Security was tightened. Stadiums were refurbished. A special venue was constructed. Hotels were booked. Schools prepared children to wave flags of Muslim nations. Posters were printed in Urdu, Arabic, and English. And in the Pakistan Mint, something special was underway. A coin was being designed. A coin that would commemorate this summit. A coin that would serve as a symbol, not just for Pakistan, but for the entire Muslim world. The 1974 Islamic Summit was no longer just a diplomatic event. It was a statement that even in the wake of war, disunity, and despair, the Ummah could rise again. And Pakistan, battered, broken, but still dreaming, would lead the way. It was a bold move. Risky. Unprecedented. But as the call went out to Muslim leaders around the world, one thing was clear. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto had thrown down the gauntlet. Now, the world waited to see. Would they answer? February 1974. The city of Lahore was not merely hosting a summit. It was making history. In a moment of profound symbolism. A former colony, battered by war, divided by geography, and still grieving from the wounds of 1971, had become the beating heart of the Islamic world. A bold invitation had been issued, and the Muslim world, fractured, weary, but hopeful, responded. This was the Second Islamic Summit Conference, a gathering of kings, presidents, revolutionaries, and ideologues, a meeting like no other in modern Islamic history. The idea of the summit had been floating in the air since 1969, when the first Islamic conference was hastily convened in Morocco, after a fire damaged the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But it lacked focus. It lacked ambition. Pakistan, under Bhutto's leadership, aimed to change that. Throughout 1973, Pakistani diplomats worked tirelessly, visiting capitals across the Muslim world. Bhutto personally reached out to key players. A King Faisal of Saudi Arabia, a quiet force of religious legitimacy. A Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, young, impassioned, and radical. A Yasser Arafat, the stateless leader of a people in exile. A Anwar Sadat of Egypt, walking the tightrope between Arab nationalism and pan-Islamism. A Shah of Iran, secular, pro-Western, but geopolitically crucial. The invitations were not mere formalities. They were diplomatic balancing acts. Pakistan had to reassure Arab monarchs, engage revolutionary republics, and embrace Islamic movements, all at once. Somehow, it worked. 38 heads of state confirmed their attendance, from Morocco to Malaysia, from Nigeria to the Maldives. The Muslim world was coming to Lahore. As the summit neared, Lahore transformed. Minari Pakistan, once the symbol of Pakistan's creation, now stood as the epicenter of Islamic diplomacy. The city's ancient gardens, mosques, and colonial-era venues were polished to perfection. Hotels were renamed. Roads were widened. Street signs were posted in Arabic, English, and Urdu. Public buildings bore messages of unity. Ekamat, Ekawaz, one Ummah, one voice. Security was tight. Protocol was flawless. And across Pakistan, television and radio began counting down to the summit. A national event unlike any before. It was a scene that stunned even seasoned diplomats. King Faisal of Saudi Arabia, cloaked in humility, greeted by throngs of admirers. Colonel Gaddafi, wearing a revolutionary uniform, raising a fist to cheering students. Yasser Arafat, stateless but respected, walking onto the tarmac with dignity. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Prime Minister of newly independent Bangladesh, making his first visit to Pakistan after the 1971 war. A moment of immense political significance. The Muslim world, with all its contradictions, had converged. For 3 days, Lahore was not merely a city. It was the capital of the Islamic world. The summit began with Quranic recitation, its verses, translated into English and Arabic. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto took the podium. His speech was passionate, layered with history, and brimming with symbolism. He spoke of a colonial injustice, the suffering of the Palestinians, the need for economic and political independence, the common bond of Islam. We are not Arabs and non-Arabs, Africans and Asians, Persians or Turks. We are Muslims, brothers in faith, and one Ummah. Applause thundered through the hall. From monarchs who ruled by divine right, to revolutionaries who had overthrown empires, all stood and clapped. The core agendas. Though the summit was heavy with ceremony, it was not short on substance. 1. The Palestinian question. For the first time, Yasser Arafat addressed an international summit as the representative of the Palestinian people. His speech, emotional, fiery, drew standing ovations. The summit passed a resolution formally recognizing the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, as the sole legitimate representative of Palestinians. This was a watershed moment, one that gave the Palestinian cause diplomatic legitimacy across the Muslim world. 2. Economic cooperation and oil diplomacy. Fresh off the 1973 oil embargo, the summit emphasized the potential of Islamic nations to control global energy flows. Oil-producing nations were urged to invest in Muslim countries rather than Western banks. The idea of an Islamic bank was proposed, a precursor to what would later become the Islamic Development Bank, IDB. Bhutto famously called for a Muslim common market, a trading bloc among Muslim nations. 3. Scientific, cultural, and educational collaboration. The summit also focused on uplifting the intellectual and cultural stature of Muslim nations. Resolutions called for Islamic universities, a media cooperation, a joint space and science ventures, a pan-Islamic youth and cultural exchanges. 4. Unity in diversity. Despite political differences, the leaders agreed that sectarian divisions, Sunni, Shia, Sufi, must not obstruct unity. A spirit of ikhtilaf ar-rai, difference in opinion, was embraced as a strength, not a weakness. Moments of drama. The summit was not without friction. The presence of Bangladesh's Sheikh Mujibur Rahman caused quiet unease among hardline Pakistani circles. Iran and Iraq shared a tense handshake. Libya and Saudi Arabia clashed ideologically. Yet somehow, diplomacy prevailed. Bhutto walked these tightropes with astonishing skill, hosting, mediating, and maneuvering with theatrical flair. The closing ceremony, a shared declaration. On the final day, a joint communiqué was released, outlining 30-plus resolutions. They included a full support for Palestinian liberation, or opposition to colonialism and Zionism, a commitment to economic cooperation, a recognition of shared Islamic heritage and mutual defense. It wasn't legally binding. It didn't end wars. But it marked something far more profound. For the first time in modern history, the Muslim world had spoken with a unified voice. And that voice had come from Pakistan, the coin that captured a moment. Amid this whirlwind of speeches, resolutions, and handshakes, a coin was minted. Not just as a souvenir, but as a symbol. It bore the minaret of the Faisal Mosque, still under construction at the time, representing Pakistan's ambition. It displayed the date in both Hijri and Gregorian calendars, uniting Islamic tradition with global relevance. And its message was simple, etched in bold script. Islamic Summit Conference, Lahore, 1394 AH, 1974 AD. This 1 rupee coin became a token of pride, distributed during the summit and into general circulation, a physical embodiment of unity. It was not just money. It was a memory, a monument, a message. A city changed, a nation reimagined. As the delegates boarded planes and the motorcades departed, the people of Pakistan stood a little taller. The summit had achieved something intangible. It had restored national confidence. Pakistan, once humiliated on the world stage, had now hosted kings and presidents, revolutionaries and reformers. It had brought them together under the banner of Islam, diplomacy, and shared destiny. Bhutto, in his closing remarks, said, "We have planted a seed here in Lahore. May the tree of Muslim unity grow from it." The 1974 Islamic Summit was more than a diplomatic event. It was a spiritual homecoming for the Ummah, a moment of rare consensus, a photograph in time where faith, politics, and history stood side by side. And at its heart was a coin. It was just 1 rupee, a humble denomination, often overlooked in daily life. But this one was different. It carried no portrait, no royal crest, no political slogan. Instead, it bore a statement, subtle but profound. Islamic Summit Conference, Lahore, 1394 AH, 1974 AD. In the swirl of fanfare, speeches, and historic declarations, one decision quietly ensured that the memory of the summit would last far beyond the closing ceremony. Pakistan would mint a coin, a simple piece of copper nickel, forged not only in metal, but in meaning. Why mint a coin? Commemorative coins are like time capsules. They don't just represent money. They carry memory. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, ever the symbolic strategist, understood this well. He didn't want the summit to be remembered through dusty documents or fleeting headlines. He wanted it held, literally, in the hands of the people. A coin was chosen not just for collectors, but for the public. It would circulate, it would travel, passing from palm to palm across Pakistan. And with every transaction, it would whisper a reminder. We were there. We hosted the Ummah. We led. Designing the coin, a delicate balance. Creating a coin for such a momentous event wasn't easy. The design team at the Pakistan Mint in Lahore was tasked with a sensitive brief. Represent the spiritual and political significance of the 1974 Islamic Summit. Avoid controversial symbols that might divide rather than unite. Ensure the coin looked proudly Pakistani, but broadly Islamic. After weeks of discussion, a design was chosen. The obverse side of the coin featured the Minor-e-Pakistan, where the Pakistan Resolution had been passed in 1940, symbolizing national pride and historic continuity. Arabic calligraphy reading Islamic Summit Conference, Lahore. The dual date format, 1394 AH, 1974 AD, bridging Hijri tradition with global timekeeping. No leader's face, no flag, no slogan, just architecture, script, and time, a deliberate choice to make the coin belong not just to Pakistan, but to the broader Ummah. The language of calligraphy. In the Muslim world, calligraphy is not just an art. It is reverence, a sacred geometry of language. The decision to inscribe the coin in Arabic, rather than solely in Urdu or English, was itself a political statement. Arabic is the language of the Quran, of shared scripture, a common denominator among Muslims, regardless of ethnicity or nation. The words chosen were not ornamental. They were unifying. They read not of domination, but of congregation. Not of authority, but of assembly. The minting process. The coin was struck in copper nickel, the standard alloy used for circulation at the time. It had a diameter of 30 millimeters, a weight of approximately 6 grams, a reeded edge, preventing counterfeiting and improving grip. The Pakistan Mint, located in Lahore, operated under the Ministry of Finance and had decades of experience, producing both regular and commemorative coinage. In early 1974, production began. Tens of thousands were minted in time for the summit. Some were set aside for official diplomatic gift sets, presented in velvet-lined boxes to heads of state and dignitaries. Others were distributed freely to schools, universities, and public offices. And the rest entered everyday circulation, tucked into wallets, dropped into tiffin boxes, exchanged at market stalls, or saved in desk drawers as keepsakes. Public reaction in Pakistan. Narrator. The Pakistani public greeted the coin with pride and curiosity. Many had never seen a coin inscribed in Arabic. For others, it became a symbol of national redemption, proof that Pakistan, only 3 years after losing East Pakistan, was once again at the center of something larger than itself. It was not uncommon for people to frame the coin, or store it alongside family heirlooms. For schoolchildren in 1974, it was a pocket-sized reminder that their country mattered. In a region defined by rivalries, colonization, and recent trauma, the coin was a soft declaration of hope, diplomatic significance, more than currency. Officially, the coin was legal tender. Unofficially, it was a diplomatic artifact. Heads of state were gifted sets in presentation. Cases, often accompanied by limited edition. Postage stamps also issued for the summit. Each leader who received it understood its unspoken message. You were part of something historic. And this is your token. In many foreign capitals, the coin was displayed in embassies, libraries, and cultural centers as a memento of a rare moment of Muslim unity. Symbolism embedded in metal. Coins are small, but symbolism weighs heavy. The 1974 Islamic Summit 1 Rupee coin symbolized a resilience, a country scarred by civil war hosting a continental summit, a redemption, a shift from military confrontation to diplomatic leadership, a representation, the power of a non-Arab South Asian nation leading the Islamic conversation, a remembrance, a tangible link to an otherwise fleeting moment of global unity. Unlike paper documents that fade or headlines that pass, the coin endured, clinking in drawers, hidden in closets, traded at antique stalls decades later. Variants, mintage, and collector interest. There were no known rare variants of the coin released for general circulation. However, several proof versions were created for collectors and dignitaries. A mirror finish proof strikes, a special packaging with summit insignia, some with gold or silver plating, ultra rare, mostly gifted. Today, collectors' value. A well-preserved examples with minimal wear are uncirculated coins in mint condition. A proof sets from summit delegates, exceedingly rare and highly prized. In numismatic circles, the 1974 Islamic Summit 1 Rupee is now considered one of Pakistan's most historically meaningful commemorative issues. Its value may not always be measured in rupees, but in reverence. Legacy in metal. The coin outlasted many of the summit's participants. A King Faisal would be assassinated just 1 year later. A Bhutto himself would be executed in 1979. As several attending nations would fall into conflict or revolution. The dream of Islamic unity would face countless setbacks. But the coin, it remains, tucked into family chests, archived in museums, passed down to grandchildren who ask, what was this summit? And through those conversations, the memory lives. A nation can rise and fall. A summit can fade. But a coin endures. In the next chapter, we'll explore what happened when that coin left the mint, how it traveled, how it was received, and how it became a quiet ambassador for Pakistan's role in the Muslim world. Islamic Summit. In March 1974, as the echoes of speeches and handshakes faded in the grand halls of Lahore, something quieter began, the journey of a coin. It didn't ride in limousines or sit behind podiums. It didn't speak in grand oratory, but it traveled farther than any delegate and reached deeper than any speech. This was the public debut of the 1974 Islamic Summit 1 Rupee coin, the moment it left the mint and entered the hands of everyday Pakistanis. It wasn't just a commemorative coin for elite collectors. This one entered real circulation. From Karachi to Quetta, Peshawar to Multan, the coin made its way into daily transactions. It was used to buy vegetables, pay bus fares, tip barbers, and settle debts among neighbors. But unlike ordinary coins, this one made people pause. What's this new design? Is that Arabic? Islamic Summit? When was that? In a pre-internet Pakistan, where most citizens experienced politics through state, radio and newspaper headlines, the coin served as silent outreach, turning each transaction into a moment of awareness. From cabinet to countertop, it's estimated that millions of these coins were struck and released. Some were hoarded. Some circulated for years. Some vanished into the back of kitchen drawers, saved not for value, but for sentiment. For the elderly, it was a symbol of Pakistan's dignity. For the young, it was a classroom curiosity. For the poor, it was one more rupee, but one that looked oddly important. In tea stalls and classrooms, in family gatherings and marketplaces, stories began forming. Did you know this coin is from when the whole Muslim world came to Pakistan? Bhutto invited kings and presidents here. We were leading back then. The coin became a conversation starter, a tactile reminder of a rare moment when Pakistan stood at the center of the Islamic world. Urban versus rural perception. In urban centers, the coin was quickly recognized. Newspapers had covered the summit. Radio Pakistan aired daily updates. Posters and postage stamps carried similar imagery. But in rural areas, where literacy was lower and political awareness lagged, the coin sparked a different reaction. It looks religious, some said. Others assumed it was a special Eid coin. Many thought it was part of a new currency system. In villages and small towns, the coin became part of oral folklore, passed around, examined under kerosene lamps, and occasionally kept as a protective charm. For many, the summit itself faded, but the coin endured. While the coin was primarily circulated within Pakistan, gift sets and special editions made their way abroad. Heads of state from Saudi Arabia, Libya, Egypt, Syria, Turkey, Iran, and others received proof coins in velvet-lined boxes. as some embassies displayed them in showcases, often alongside flags and summit photographs. In certain cases, religious scholars, journalists, and business delegations received them as part of diplomatic outreach packages. In Kuwait and the UAE, collectors began seeking out the coin, not for its metal, but for its meaning. It came from Pakistan, a country that hosted the Ummah. In diplomacy, not all influence wears a uniform or carries a flag. Sometimes, influence clinks in pockets. Bhutto understood the language of symbolic gestures, where state visits could be cancelled and treaties broken. A coin could linger, wordless and enduring. The Islamic summit coin served as a form of soft power, helping project an image of Pakistan as an Islamic cultural leader, a unifying force amid sectarian and national divides, a country confident enough to mint memory into metal. By placing the Minaret Pakistan, rather than a mosque, at the center of the design, Pakistan asserted not only Islamic unity, but its own role in shaping it. In schools across Pakistan, the coin became an unofficial teaching aid. Teachers would ask, "What is this building? What year is 1394 in English? What was the Islamic summit?" It was a coin that invited questions, not about arithmetic, but about history, religion, and identity. Some schools even framed the coin in glass, placing it near portraits of Jinnah and Allama Iqbal, a visual reminder of Pakistan's spiritual mission. Coins that disappeared. Of course, not every coin became a keepsake. Over time, many were worn down through circulation, as some were melted for metal in later economic downturns, or others were lost, tossed away, or accidentally discarded in the tide of inflation. As newer designs emerged and currency values shifted, the 1974 Islamic summit coin quietly receded from public consciousness. By the 1990s, few coins remained in regular use. By the 2000s, it had become a collector's item, more likely to appear at flea markets than fruit stands. But for those who had held it in 1974, the memory remained vivid. Oral histories, stories of coin encounters. In recent years, as coin collectors and historians have revisited Pakistan's monetary history, oral histories have emerged. Here are a few. Malik Bashir, Rawalpindi. "I kept that coin in my wallet for 20 years. I didn't spend it. It was like keeping a little bit of respect in my pocket." Zahida Bano, Multan. "We used to joke that the coin brought barakat, blessing. If you got one in your change, your day would go well." Adil Khan, Peshawar. "I gave my only Islamic summit coin to my son on his wedding day. Not for money, for meaning." These testimonies prove what economic reports never can, that a coin, though forged in metal, can carry emotion, media and cultural echoes. Though the coin never appeared in official film or literature, its presence lingered. A Pakistani dramas in the 1980s occasionally referenced the coin from the summit days. A religious magazines sometimes used its imagery to evoke a sense of lost unity. In the digital age, YouTube and TikTok, numismatists have rediscovered it, showcasing the coin as both a historical curiosity and a political artifact. In online forums, Pakistanis and collectors from across the Muslim world trade stories, photos, and questions. Does anyone know where to get the original 1974 coin? What's its real value? Do you still remember the summit? In a world driven by GDP and military might, it's easy to overlook something as simple as a coin. But the 1974 Islamic summit 1 Rupee was never meant to impress with gold or rarity. It was meant to remind a people who had suffered division that they had once united a world, to remind generations yet unborn that there was a moment when the Ummah gathered, to remind a nation that it had stood tall not with weapons, but with welcome. And through this reminder, the coin became something more than money. It became memory. It became message.it became witness. Coins are more than currency. To collectors, they're stories in metal, history in your palm, a time machine without gears. The 1974 Islamic Summit 1 Rupee coin, once passed across tea stalls and public buses, is now a sought-after artifact in the numismatic world. Its journey from common currency to prized collectible tells us as much about Pakistan's legacy as it does about how history is remembered and preserved. Numismatics, the art of memory. Coin collecting, or numismatics, is not merely a hobby. It is a record of civilization, a study of design, mintage, and political symbolism, a passion for rarity, beauty, and backstory. Within the global Islamic coinage category, the 1974 coin holds a unique niche, a modern, machine-struck, circulated coin that simultaneously commemorated a singular geopolitical event, symbolized pan-Islamic unity, bore distinctly Pakistani national identity, rarity versus recognition. Let's address the central numismatic question. Is the 1974 1 rupee coin rare? No, and yes. It was not rare at the time of minting. Millions were produced and circulated across Pakistan. But over time, many were worn down or melted, or only a small fraction survived in uncirculated or proof condition. A fewer still were preserved in collector capsules or albums. Today, it's easy to find well-used, circulated copies. But finding a mint state specimen, a proof edition, or a coin with original luster and sharp details, is far more difficult and far more valuable. Minting details, what collectors look for. Collectors and historians both seek clarity about the design and mintage, specifications of the coin. Here's what numismatists typically note. Feature details. Metal composition copper-nickel alloy. Weight tilde 10 grams. Diameter tilde 30.5 mm. Obverse design Minority Pakistan. Islamic Summit in English and Urdu. Reverse design denomination 1 rupee, crescent moon, and star. Inscription language Urdu, Arabic, English. Mint Pakistan Mint, Lahore. Edge reeded or plain, some variation reported. Mintage year, Hijri Gregorian. 1394 AH. 1974 CE. Some collectors seek die variations. Slight differences in engraving caused by tool, replacements or minting errors. Others chase after toned coins. Specimens that developed a unique color hue due to age, oxygen exposure, and handling. These are seen as naturally beautiful and highly collectible. Collector tiers. Who values this coin? The 1974 coin appeals to a wide spectrum of collectors. 1. National collectors, Pakistan. View the coin as a piece of national pride, and many include it in full Pakistani coinage albums. Some own it as a memory of Bhutto-era diplomacy. 2. Islamic coin collectors, global. A focus on coins from the Muslim world, especially ones that commemorate pan-Islamic events. For them, this coin is one of the rare post-colonial Islamic unity symbols. 3. Commemorative series collectors. Collect coins tied to events, not geography. Or include this coin along with others like in 1973 Egypt-Israel war commemorative issues, in 1975 Saudi Riyal with King Faisal's mosque plans, and 1980s Iranian Revolution coinage. 4. Proof set hunters. Seek the official presentation sets gifted to dignitaries and diplomats. These are extremely limited in number and command high prices. Coin grading. How value is determined. In numismatics, condition is everything. Professional grading organizations like NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, or PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, grade coins from PO1, poor, to MS70, mint state perfect. For the 1974 Islamic Summit coin, circulated coins typically grade VF20 to EF40, or uncirculated coins fetch MS60 to MS65. There are a few proof versions, though unverified officially, are known to exist with mirror surfaces and ultrafine detail. The difference in market value is grade estimated value, USD, VF30 $3.5, F40 $5.10, MES60 $15.25, MES65 $50 plus, proof $100 plus, when verifiable. Prices vary with market demand and buyer interest. Stories from collectors. Ali Beg, Karachi. My grandfather gave me his Summit coin when I turned 12. I didn't understand it then. Now, it's the centerpiece of my coin wall. Sarah Ahmed, Islamabad. I bought it from a flea market for 30 rupees. Later, a collector offered me 5,000. I didn't sell it. It's not just a coin. It's an era. Dr. Yusuf Habib, Dubai. I include it in my collection of Muslim Unity coins. It's right next to the 1979 Iranian gold issue and the 1987 Mecca coin. Online markets and collector forums. In the age of eBay, OLX, and Facebook collector groups, the 1974 coin has found new visibility. Listings often include keywords like Islamic Summit coin, 1974 Pakistani Rupee, Minor-e Pakistan commemorative. Online auctions have seen a basic coin sell for a few dollars. A high-grade coins fetch 10x that. A proof sets, when authenticated, go for several hundred. Even fakes have emerged, especially polished circulated coins passed off as proofs. Experienced collectors know to check for original strike quality and packaging. Institutional collections and museums. The coin is preserved in several formal settings. State Bank Museum, Karachi, features the coin in its commemorative section with detailed explanation of the summit. Lahore Numismatic Club Archives houses multiple variants of the coin, including suspected proof strikes and die varieties. OIC Cultural Center, Jeddah, includes the coin in a display on Islamic diplomatic history. These museums treat the coin as a cultural document, not just metal. The coin in numismatic literature. Several reference books and catalogues include this coin. Coins of Pakistan, 1947 present. Lists mintage. Numbers and visual identifiers. The Islamic world in numismatics. Gives cultural context to coins like the 1974 Rupee, a modern commemorative coinage of South Asia. Places it within broader South Asian trends. Scholars highlight its dual role, as circulating currency and as a political memento, a living relic. What gives this coin continued numismatic significance isn't just rarity or metal. It's that it still speaks. In every collector's drawer, every father's wallet, every dusty envelope tucked into an Urdu poetry book, the coin whispers, "We once stood for something bigger." Coins are strange things. They vanish in our pockets, then reappear in history books. They start as metal and end as meaning. The 1974 Islamic Summit 1 Rupee coin has endured, not because of its material value, but because of its immaterial weight. It reminds us, of a summit that mattered, of a country that led, of a people who dreamed. In a collector's world obsessed with dates, designs, and conditions, this coin holds a place carved by memory, not just metal. The summit ended. The banners came down. Delegations flew home. But the aftershocks of that February, political, spiritual, and economic, would ripple through the Islamic world for decades to come. What did the 1974 Islamic Summit truly achieve? And more importantly, what did it change? To answer that, we must track its legacy across diplomacy, institutions, geopolitics, and identity. This wasn't just a moment. It was a movement. And for Pakistan, it was a rebirth. The geopolitical ripple, a new Islamic identity. Before 1974, the Muslim world was scattered, not only across borders but across ideologies. Arab socialism versus monarchy, a secularism versus theocracy, a West-aligned versus non-aligned versus Soviet-leaning. But the Lahore Summit marked a pivot toward shared interests, especially the Palestinian cause, a control over natural resources, especially oil, a formation of a unified Islamic front on global issues, Yasser Arafat's formal invitation and recognition by Pakistan and others at the summit gave the PLO a dramatic boost in global legitimacy. It was no longer just a rebel group, it became the de facto voice of a people. The summit's Islamic unity message signaled to the West and East alike that the Muslim world was no longer politically dormant. A message was sent, not just by declaration, but by presence. 38 leaders, one cause, one ummah, institutional births, the Islamic Development Bank and more. One of the most enduring outcomes of the summit was the strengthening of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, a body that had existed in form since 1969 but lacked robust structure and purpose. Post-summit, it evolved into a platform for collective political dialogue, a vehicle for economic cooperation, are a network for humanitarian response. The Islamic Development Bank, IDB, founded in 1975, directly after the summit. The IDB was a monumental step toward Islamic economic integration. Its goals: provide Sharia-compliant loans and financial services, support infrastructure and education across member states, reduce dependency on Western financial institutions. Headquartered in Jeddah, the bank today serves over 57 countries and has been involved in rebuilding war zones, financing major dam and energy projects, backing vocational training and STEM education in Africa and Asia. The IDB was not just a bank. It was a manifestation of the summit's ideals. Pakistan's role, from fracture to frontline. For Pakistan, the summit was more than diplomacy. It was redemption. Just 3 years earlier, the country had been split in two, East Pakistan becoming Bangladesh. The scars ran deep. A national shame. A military humiliation. A diplomatic isolation. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto used the summit as a stage for reinvention. Historian Dr. Ahmed Rashid. Bhutto put Pakistan back on the map, not as a broken state, but as a leader of Muslim aspirations. The success of the summit allowed Pakistan to rebuild regional alliances, especially with the Arab world, establish moral authority on the Kashmir issue, serve as a bridge between monarchies and revolutionary states, and perhaps most critically, it reignited domestic confidence. The oil factor, economic realignment. The summit took place just months after the 1973 oil embargo, when Arab nations cut petroleum supplies to the West in response to support for Israel in the Yom Kippur War. This transformed oil from a commodity into a geopolitical weapon. The Lahore summit became the first post-embargo congregation of Muslim leaders, and its timing was critical. Key discussions included coordinating oil exports for political leverage, using oil revenues to fund Islamic development, resisting economic neocolonialism. Saudi Arabia, Libya, and Kuwait pledged economic aid to fellow Muslim nations, many of whom were struggling post-colonially. The result was a new era where petrodollars flowed into Muslim-majority countries. Islamic banks emerged as alternatives to IMF lending. Financial cooperation became a pillar of unity. The coin may have said 1 rupee, but its legacy touched trillions in trade. Ideological impact: the rise of pan-Islamism. Following the summit, many Muslim nations began adopting more Islamic references in state policy. Pakistan declared itself an Islamic republic in its 1973 constitution. Libya's Gaddafi adopted a Quran-based legal framework. Saudi Arabia amplified its export of Wahhabi doctrine as a unifier. Iran's religious elite, watching closely, would soon begin mobilizing against the Shah. While each country interpreted Islamic governance differently, the summit's unspoken message was clear. Secular nationalism had failed. It was time for Islamic identity to rise. Of course, this shift came with complexity and contradiction. Some governments used Islam for genuine integration, others for consolidation of power, unfulfilled promises and quiet dissolution. Not all that was dreamed in 1974 was realized. By the early 1980s, many summit leaders had died or been overthrown. Bhutto was executed in 1979. Gaddafi became increasingly isolated. King Faisal was assassinated in 1975. Civil wars, coups, and invasions would fracture the summit's legacy. The OIC, while still active, became more of a symbolic forum than an effective political force. Some critics argue the summit produced vision, but not mechanisms. Economic unity never translated into political muscle. Sectarian divides, particularly between Sunni and Shia powers, widened in the decades that followed. Even the 1974 coin, once a proud emblem, faded from public consciousness. Cultural legacy: the summit in memory. Despite political setbacks, the idea of unity that the summit championed lived on. In art, literature, and film across the Muslim world, references to 1974 persist. Urdu poets wrote of the Ummat-e Ittihad, unity of the Ummah. Arab writers recalled the sight of Arafat and Faisal shaking hands. In textbooks, particularly in Pakistan, the summit became a high point in post-independence foreign policy. Even the Minority Pakistan, once a freedom monument, gained new symbolism as a beacon of pan-Islamic ambition. And of course, there's the coin. Tucked in wallets, drawers, and museums, it became a relic of a time when Muslims dared to dream, together. Echoes in modern times. Today, echoes of the summit resurface whenever Muslim nations attempt to form coalitions. The Islamic Military Counterterrorism Coalition, led by Saudi Arabia, calls for an Islamic bloc in the UN General Assembly. Periodic summits in Kuala Lumpur or Doha centered on Muslim solidarity. But nothing has matched the scale, symbolism, and spontaneity of Lahore. 1974. It was a moment, impossible to recreate, but impossible to forget. Even in the digital age, the 1974 summit is referenced in forums, political speeches, and cultural retrospectives as the golden attempt at Islamic diplomacy. Final reflection. Did the 1974 Islamic summit change the world? Not entirely, but it changed how the Muslim world saw itself. It gave voice to common struggles. It gave structure to future cooperation. And in a time of post-colonial uncertainty, it gave the Ummah something rare, hope. For 1 week in February, under one roof, the Muslim world gathered, not to war, not to condemn, but to connect. That is a legacy worth remembering. Time ages everything, even coins, even memories. But not all things old are forgotten. Some become symbols, fragile yet powerful, of what we once hoped to become. The 1974 Islamic Summit 1 Rupee coin is now over half a century old. Its silvery surface bears the patina of time, but its symbolism continues to whisper across generations. How is this coin, and the summit it marked, remembered today? Is it a forgotten token of a vanished dream, or a dormant spark waiting to be rekindled? Let's explore its place in modern Pakistan, in the global Muslim consciousness, and in the unfolding story of Islamic unity. In modern Pakistan, remembered, or misplaced. In the daily hustle of life in Pakistan, many citizens under the age of 40 have never seen or heard of the 1974 Islamic Summit coin. Public memory has faded. History textbooks give it a paragraph at best. The summit itself is barely taught in schools. Ask a teenager in Karachi or Lahore about the summit, and you're more likely to hear about cricket or TikTok than the historic gathering in Minority Pakistan. But among older generations, historians, and numismatists, the coin still resonates. Dr. Maria Khalid, historian, Lahore. This was the coin of a high point, before the coups, the hangings, the religious extremism. It reminds us that Pakistan once led with ideas. For collectors, it's a treasure. For thinkers, it's a metaphor. For many, though, it's simply unknown. Yet, in pockets of society, coin clubs, university debates, history forums, the coin is making a quiet comeback. A generation reconnecting. In the digital age, younger Muslims across the world are rediscovering history in new ways. YouTube documentaries, TikTok history explainers, Instagram pages featuring rare coins and historic artifacts. The 1974 Islamic Summit coin has become an occasional feature, a mystical relic that sparks curiosity. Why did Pakistan mint this coin? Why did so many Muslim leaders gather in one place? Why don't we talk about it more? The questions are leading to a slow, grassroots historical awakening. Ali Raza, a 22-year-old vlogger from Islamabad. When I first saw the coin, I thought it was fake. Like, how could this even happen? All those leaders? In Pakistan? My friends and I looked it up and we were like, this should be a Netflix series. Digital archives and the power of storytelling. Unlike earlier decades, the summit and the coin now live in the cloud as well as in coin albums. Digital scans of the coin are available online. Summit speeches, once buried in archives, are being transcribed and translated. Blogs and podcasts are analyzing the significance of the event. In today's fractured world, what does this mean? It means that new meaning is being assigned by a generation that didn't live through the Cold War, but that understands the urgency of unity in a polarized world. Revisiting the message of unity. The 1974 summit preached cohesion over competition, spirituality over sectarianism, and shared destiny over narrow nationalism. Today, that message seems both more distant and more needed than ever. Muslim nations in the 2020s face ongoing sectarian strife, authoritarian crackdowns, a disunity in response to crises like Gaza, Syria, Kashmir, Uyghur repression, economic dependency on non-Muslim superpowers. The OIC, though still operational, is often criticized for passivity. The 1974 summit and its coin remind us of a time when Muslim nations dared to dream together. In a time when hashtags trend and vanish, the coin remains. Solid, silent, insistent, a whisper from the past, we were one, once. The coin as a symbol of soft power. Even today, some Pakistani diplomats and think tanks argue that the spirit of 1974 can be rekindled. They suggest that Pakistan should promote cultural diplomacy within the Muslim world, sponsor educational exchanges focused on pan-Islamic history, digitize and share summit archives globally, reissue the coin as a special edition for schools and collectors. There have even been quiet calls within numismatic and diplomatic circles to commemorate the summit's 50th anniversary with a new coin, a documentary screening, or an OIC-backed Unity Day or think tank symposium. Though these ideas have yet to be realized, they reflect a powerful truth. The coin still inspires. Coin as educational tool. In a handful of schools and private academies in Pakistan, the coin is now being used in history curriculum innovation. Teachers use the coin as an object-based learning artifact. Who were the leaders on that day? Why was Islamic unity important then? What does this coin teach us about diplomacy, art, and ambition? In an era when education systems struggle to keep students engaged, the coin becomes more than metal. It becomes a bridge to the past. Global Muslim reflection, fragmented but aware. Across the Muslim world, the memory of the 1974 summit lingers not as daily discussion, but as a latent aspiration. In Malaysia, Turkey, and Indonesia, Islamic cooperation forums still reference the summit in their founding documents. In Africa, where many Muslim-majority countries struggle with instability, there's a growing call for a Pan-African Islamic coalition, an echo of Lahore. Even in the diaspora, young Muslims in Europe and North America are asking, what would a united Ummah look like today? What role could culture and soft power play? Could the 1974 vision be reimagined in a digital, globalized age? The coin is becoming a symbol not of the past, but of potential. Coin, memory, and the arts. In recent years, Pakistani artists and filmmakers have started to reinterpret the summit and the coin in their work. Exhibitions in Lahore and Islamabad have featured the 1974 coin, next to modern artworks representing a unity and division, a hope and heartbreak, a dreams of political solidarity. Poets have invoked the summit in contemporary ghazals and spoken word pieces. One popular line from a viral performance goes, Ek Sikha Tha, Asni Kaha Tha, Ikhtilaf Se Pali, Hum Ikhtai. There was a coin, it once told us, before discord, we were one. Looking forward, a coin's warning and a coin's wish. The summit of 1974 was not perfect. The coin did not end war or poverty or ideological rifts, but it did mark a moment, rare and radiant, of collective purpose. In an age of rising Islamophobia, surveillance states, cultural dilution, and ecological crisis, the Muslim world again faces the question, will we unite in shared cause, or fragment in endless factions? The answer may not lie in governments. It may lie in memory, in symbols, in stories. And so, the coin continues to matter, not because it is worth more in rupees, but because it is worth everything in remembrance. Every coin tells a story, not just of trade or currency, but of intention, of moments frozen in metal, of history captured in a single clink of time. This, the 1974 Islamic Summit 1 rupee coin, was never just a coin. It was a statement, a symbol, a soft-spoken prayer struck in copper-nickel alloy, for unity, dignity, and hope. But coins, like civilizations, travel. They pass from hand to hand, from leader to laborer, from collector to child, and in their journey, they gather fingerprints and meaning. Let us follow the path of one such coin. Forged in the Pakistan Mint, with the scent of fresh metal still clinging to it, the rupee was released into a world full of hope. In 1974, the streets of Lahore pulsed with energy. Flags of 38 Muslim nations fluttered above the Minaret Pakistan. The world had its eyes on Pakistan, not for war or crisis, but for diplomacy. A vendor in Lahore sold tea near the venue of the summit. He handed change to a Saudi delegate, a steaming cup of chai and a newly minted summit rupee. That coin was placed into a wallet, flown back to Riyadh, tucked away in a drawer beside other keepsakes, a prayer bead, a diplomatic badge, a tiny Quran. Years later, it was given as a gift to a young student, with the words, "This is from when we believed." The coin changed hands many times. It was lost, found, sold, and collected. In the 1980s, a shopkeeper in Karachi used it as ordinary currency, unaware of its historical value. In the 1990s, a coin dealer in Peshawar recognized it and preserved it in a velvet-lined box. In the early 2000s, during a university lecture, a professor passed it around to illustrate Pakistan's golden diplomatic age. Each person who touched the coin felt something different. A reminder of Bhutto's ambition, a memory of unity in a divided world, a whisper of what once was, and could be again. The coin bore silent witness to history's turn. It watched as the dream of pan-Islamic unity dimmed, the organization of Islamic cooperation faced stagnation. Pakistan moved from Bhutto to Zia to democracy to military rule and back again. It felt the tremors of Afghanistan's wars, the echoes of Iran's revolution, the pain of Palestine, and the silence of forgotten summits. Yet, the coin endured. Because symbols do not age the way nations do. They wait. They preserve the past until the present is ready to remember. In the 2010s, the coin resurfaced in a YouTube video about rare Pakistani currency. That video was shared by students in Malaysia, scholars in Turkey, and activists in Palestine. A Palestinian journalist wrote, "I had never heard of the summit. I found the coin in a flea market in Istanbul. I Googled it, and it brought tears to my eyes." In Toronto, a Pakistani-Canadian teenager used it as the centerpiece of a school project on cultural diplomacy. In Istanbul, a Turkish collector placed it beside Ottoman-era medallions. In Mecca, an elderly Haji, upon seeing the coin in a collector's display, whispered, "We once dreamed together." 50 years later, in 2024, a young Pakistani historian created an exhibition titled, "Coins of Unity, Forgotten Symbols of the Muslim World." At its heart, a single 1974 1 rupee coin. Visitors stopped. Some read the Arabic inscription aloud. Others stared at the minaret design. Children asked questions their parents couldn't answer. One man wept. When asked why, he said, "I was there. I saw Faisal. I saw Bhutto. I remember the feeling. This coin, it brings it all back." As the lights dim on our story, remember this. The 1974 Islamic Summit coin is not just a piece of currency. It is a record of a moment when 38 nations, despite their vast differences, came together in a fragile harmony. It is a reminder of Pakistan's highest diplomatic moment, of the Muslim world's brief alignment, of leaders lost and dreams deferred. But also, it is a seed of memory, of meaning, of mission. To pick up the coin is to pick up a question. Can we still find unity in a fractured time? A rupee, a summit, a story. Half a century later, the coin still turns. In hands, in hearts, in history. It waits for us to listen, for us to remember, for us to act.